Hello everyone, and welcome to the Formal Review. Today, we'll be talking about the 2020 film, Mulan. Now sit back, relax, maybe grab a drink, and let's talk about the movie.
What's up everybody, and welcome back to the Formal Review. This is Season 3, Episode 25, and I thank you for joining me once again. Now, I know I said in the last episode that we're back at the theater, and we are. However, with Mulan, it was not released in theaters, but it was released on Disney+. It was available to stream on Friday, September 4th for $30, in addition to Disney Plus's regular subscription fee. It will become free to anyone with the standard Disney Plus membership on December 4th. Mulan originally was supposed to be released back on March 9th, but it obviously has been delayed multiple times due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. However, since it was originally supposed to be released in theaters, I do want to give my thoughts on it as an Asian American. In this episode, I will be talking about this new film, the animated version, and the history behind both Disney renditions of the story. I'm also going to quickly go into my thoughts on the other live action movies and Disney's attempts to really monetize our nostalgia. So stay tuned. So before I get started, I do want to preface this episode with a slight warning about any Cantonese or Mandarin mispronunciations that I have. I will do my best to get the pronunciations right. However, if I am incorrect, I do apologize for that. Now, I also want to preface this episode with a slight spoiler warning, as I will be talking about a film that came out in 1998 and also the new film. There is a lot to discuss, but I do not want to ruin the movie for you. So as I always say, go watch the film first, then come back and listen so you can hear everything and understand what I'm talking about. However, I will try to keep it as spoiler-free as possible. But if you have seen the film or you just don't care about that, keep listening. So before we get into the movie, what I want to do is add this little segment at the beginning in. So as a lot of people know, and if you don't already, I do have a very big movie collection. So I'm going to add this little segment to update everyone what movies I've found and added to my collection since the last time I talked. And sometimes there may not be any, but sometimes there may be something and I want to actually talk about it. I think it's fun. So anyway, I currently have actually 764 movies in my collection currently. Now this is a mix of some DVDs, some 4K, but mostly Blu-rays. So I'm actually now going through a process of upgrading a lot of the Blu-rays. And if you follow me on Instagram, you know that I have been promoting the 4K way on that and showing what films I've upgraded to and also what 4K films I have bought. So for those who haven't been following me, I have 2001: A Space Odyssey, Bad Boys for Life, Bram Stoker's Dracula, Blues Brothers, all 8 Harry Potter films, Jaws, Jurassic World: Fallen Kingdom, Mad Max: Fury Road, The Mask of Zorro, and Star Wars Episode 9: The Rise of Skywalker. Now, I've been slowly upgrading a lot of my movies to 4K, but the problem is obviously I don't want to go broke and break bank. So what I have been doing is honestly just looking for sales and deals on everything that I can find. And if I find a Blu-ray deal, what I do is look up if there is a 4K version of it coming out, or if there's a 4K version of it coming out, I don't buy it. But I still try to upgrade my DVDs to Blu-rays as well. So recently I did just purchase a good amount of movies that I wanted to share with y'all on Blu-ray. So I just found good deals on Machete, which I upgraded from DVD, the Lego Movie, which I've only seen once. I liked it a lot, but it wasn't worth buying, but I found a really good deal on it. Lucy, I didn't really like this movie that much, but I thought it was a good movie to have on my collection, and it again was on sale, and I know it's a decent action flick. Kick-Ass, I love that movie a lot. Lion, an extremely underrated movie starring Dev Patel. Lincoln, the Steven Spielberg movie, I never bought it because it is a very long movie. And then Jane Eyre, I love this version of the story, and I think it's a really good version, especially with Michael Fassbender. The Lost Boys, I found that one at a thrift store, but it was completely brand new, which was great. And then This Is 40, and I love that movie. And the one that I haven't seen, which I thought was really cool, was All the Way, which is a TV movie starring Bryan Cranston and Anthony Mackie as LBJ and Martin Luther King Jr. respectively. I have heard of this, but I never actually watched it, so I may check this movie out and do a review on it if that's something you all want to hear, so let me know about that. Anyway, that's the new additions to my collection, and I hope you enjoyed it. Grab your drinks and let's get back to the movie at hand. So Mulan is an action drama film that is a live adaptation of Disney's 1998 animated film of the same name, which in turn is based on the Chinese folklore, the Ballad of Mulan. So here's a quick history lesson. While Mulan was a female warrior from the northern and southern dynasties period of Chinese history. The Ballad of Mulan is set in the northern Wei area between the years of 386 to 535. The poem starts with Mulan sitting in her room, has one male from each family is called to serve in the army to defend the Toba realm from Lulan invaders. Her father is old and weak, and her younger brother is just a child, so she decides to take his place and bids farewell to her parents who support her. She is already skilled in fighting, having been taught martial arts, sword fighting, and archery by the time she enlists in the army. After 12 years, the army returns and the warriors are rewarded. Mulan turns down an official post and asks only for a camel to carry her home. She's greeted with joy by her family. She dons her own clothes and meets her comrades who are shocked that the 12 years that they were enlisted together, she was a woman. In 621, there was a new rendition of the story. The founder of the Tang dynasty emerged victorious over Wang Shicheng and Do Jinde. The latter then gave birth to a daughter named Do Xinyang, who was another female warrior who became Mulan's Lao Tong in Romance of Sui and Tang. Lao Tong is a type of relationship in Chinese culture formerly practiced in Hunan that bonded two girls together for eternity as kindred sisters. However, the movie rendition mostly adapts the ballad, which ends with a close with Mulan offering a metaphor. The male hare has a heavy front and paws, and the female hare tends to squint, but when they are running side by side close to the ground, who can tell me which is male or female? So Disney's animated film broadly followed that storyline, except for Mulan is not a well-trained when she runs away. It also adds a love interest, a lucky cricket, a goofy dragon, voiced hilariously by Eddie Murphy, who and also a representation of family ancestors. And this film was released to critical acclaim, grossing over $304 million worldwide and earning a Golden Globe and Oscar nominations for Best Animated Picture. It was noted back then, however, that Chinese audiences did not care for Disney's version as it was too westernized, and it only grossed $1.3 million in that region. So, though it's not really historically accurate, like a lot of people my age, this was a part of my childhood. The music, the story, and everything about it just captivated an audience. So I did rewatch this movie before watching the live action version, and I don't go into all this detail to compare it to the live action version, but it's to demonstrate that I am a big fan of the original. So as I described in the ballad, the movie is very similar to that a girl disguises herself as a man to take on her ailing father's place in the Emperor's army. She goes on to save her crew and country, and honestly, out of all the Disney princesses, Mulan smashes the glass ceiling and really just shows the world how brave, strong, and resilient she is as a woman in comparison to her male counterparts in war, which is one of the world's most treacherous environments. And this film really does capture a hard truth that the patriarchy is well and truly alive in many societies, in history, and honestly, still to this day. But aside from the messages, the score is still to this day amazing. I've seen this movie multiple times as an adult, but this was the first time with the new setup that I have. So the movie doesn't have Dolby Atmos, but it has a decent 5.1, and my speakers were pounding. The subwoofer was just a thunderstorm, and my room was feeling every little bit of that score. And not gonna lie, this was such an amazing rewatch of this movie. I was singing along as anyone I would do with every Disney movie that I grew up with. The song Reflection stands on its own. The melody is beautiful. The vocals are fantastic. And this is perhaps one of the most strong Disney films ever, because she walks the garden slowly, then ends up in her family temple where she wipes off the makeup with this duality with reflections and everything. And then as the music stops, her father sits down next to her, and how she is representative of a flower. And seriously, this movie has so many great moments. Some of the visuals are phenomenal, especially during the transformation scene. It really dives into the idea of the duality aspect of this character. The entire scene with the matchmaker shows people kind of trying to force her into this doll look, but then this moment is when she really takes control and really tells to herself and also the audience that she has commitment to defend her country, to defend her father, to defend just herself. And really this moment is so epic. And then as she's walking away, looks back at her family, and you feel just the emotion in her character. And gosh, then it's such a great moment in the movie. Even though some of the score is really good, some of the music is very late 90s, early 2000s, but hey, that's not really a problem for me because that's my childhood anyway. And going into the cast. Now, I know the live action version has obvious all East Asian, if not an all Chinese cast, but This film has some great voice acting by Asian cast members. Though not all Chinese, there are definitely some great East Asian voices, which then makes sense given the lack of representation back then. Wen Ming-na, known for her work on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and The Mandalorian, voices Fa Mulan. Her singing voice was from Lea Salonga. Shout out to her, by the way. She is one of the most well-known but somewhat not known Asian singers. She is Filipina and has sung on Broadway shows such as Miss Saigon, Aladdin, Les Miserables, My Fair Lady, and Cinderella. She also sang the non-Indian version of A Whole New World. Seriously, go look her up and you'll see how much she has done. Anyway, back to Mulan. B.D. Wong, known for his work on Gotham and Mr. Robot, voices Captain Li Shang, with the singing voice obviously going to Danny Osmond, but that's whatever. Gary Watanabe from 16 Candles voices Ling. George Takei from Star Trek voices the main ancestor. Jerry Tondo voices Chin Po. Sun Tek Oh voices Mulan's father, who was also on Stargate, SG-1, MacGyver, MASH, Charlie's Angels, Airwolf, Magnum PI, Hawaii Five-0, Kung Fu, Zorro, Baba, Black Sheep, and Touched by an Angel. James Hung, known for his work in Kung Fu Panda, Blade Runner, and Jackie Chan Adventures, was Chi Fu. With over 600 film and television credits, he is one of the most prolific English-speaking actors of all time and has honestly increased Asian American representation in Hollywood. James Shigeta voiced General Lee. Shigeta is not known to a lot of people, but he was in Die Hard. He often played romantic lead roles, which are almost non-existent for an Asian actor during his time, which makes him a trailblazer Asian American in representation. Then, as the most of him know him as Mr. Miyagi, voiced the Emperor, Morita Noriyuki, or known as Pat Morita. As a kid, whenever I was asked which celebrity I looked the most like, I always had to say him, because anyone else they didn't really know. They always laughed, and I obviously didn't really look like an old man, but he was pretty much all I had outside of Japanese actors in Japanese films. I didn't really watch Star Trek, so I didn't really know much about George Takei until later. Morita's story is also pretty amazing when you know about it. He developed spinal tuberculosis at the age of 2 and spent the bulk of the next 9 years in the hospital. He was in a full body cast and he was told that he would never walk. And then after undergoing extensive spinal surgery and learning to walk at the age of 11, he was then transferred to a concentration camp to be with his family during World War II. He did many roles, but gained extreme stardom once he played Mr. Miyagi in the Karate Kid films. What most people forget or really don't know is that his accent is completely fake, as he was born in America.
My life is so filled with twists and things. That's why Miyagi talk like this, because he run out of energy.
Anyway, he's one of the reasons why I love the Karate Kid movies so much. For anyone who hasn't watched Cobra Kai, the series on Netflix, it's really worth it. I thought it was really good, especially if you're a big fan of the original movies. The first season is the real good one, but the second season is good, but it's definitely for a young person drama. And I don't think it's too much of a bad thing, but I think it's only good for creating new fans while also keeping the old ones. I think that the martial arts in that is better than Iron Fist and is very well done. And I am looking forward to the third season. Anyway, going back to Mulan. So, my point with saying all those actors is to show that that movie did have some great representation, at least in voice acting, even though it wasn't historically accurate and honestly was a little westernized. But as a kid growing up in America, you can only want so much, and frankly that was all I got, aside from Japanese anime. Now fast forward to this past few years when they started developing this movie. So I was excited and I expected that they were going to develop it in a really well done way. Now I was hesitant when they first announced that it wasn't going to have music and it wasn't going to have certain characters, but as the live action versions of these Disney films have slowly been coming out, I'm actually glad that they decided to take some things away from the animated movie, because there has been some issues with the live action versions of these animated movies that have been not so great. I did really enjoy Cinderella. I thought that was well done, though I have only watched it once in theaters. I thought Lion King was absolute garbage because, again, if you've heard my review on it, in short, my main issue with that is that they really honestly just did a word-for-word remake of the animated movie, except with the emotion completely gone, because they tried to keep this realistic point to it. And while that makes sense to what they were trying to do, it's hard to get attached to characters that don't have human attributes. And honestly, some of the dialogue was lazy. What I mean by that is, listen to these two clips of James Earl Jones's deliverance of a line in the animated version.
Simba, I'm very disappointed in you. You could have been killed. You deliberately disobeyed me. And what's worse, you put Nala in danger.
And now the live action version.
You deliberately disobeyed me. You could have been killed. And what's worse, you put Nala in danger.
It just feels lazy. And honestly, if you're gonna do a movie word for word, you might as well put the exact same emotion into it. Like, come on. I think some of the music was kind of lazy too. So overall, yeah, I wasn't a fan of that. Dumbo did take some risks, but that movie again has to target animals, and then they just went the exact opposite of that and decided to target on humans, and that was weird. Beauty and the Beast was decent. It wasn't poorly done, and they did take some risks with it, trying new songs and adding in some storylines and stuff. So I thought it was decent, but then again, the animated movie is just so much better with the exact same storyline. So it's kind of hard to really like that movie or really want to rewatch it again. Aladdin is the one that I have the biggest issues with because I thought it was fun, but it wasn't a well done movie. There was just some choices with it. I didn't really like the choice to have Guy Ritchie direct this movie. There were just some real stylistic aspects to it that I wasn't a fan of. The random slow motions here and there, it didn't really fit. I didn't like the actor who played Aladdin. I thought he was kind of lazy at times. I didn't think he could sing. I did like their new take on Jafar's story and in aligning his story to Aladdin's. Thinking about it, it's actually very similar to what they did with the villain in this movie, but I'll go into that in a little bit. But I do think that they could have gone into that a little bit more. I also did really like Will Smith as the genie. I did enjoy that he wasn't trying to be Robin Williams. He was being himself, which I thought worked as a kind of a wingman. And I didn't mind his new storyline that they added, and I thought adding a hip-hop feel to the songs was a really good idea. Then they really did a decent job, I think, on establishing Jasmine as a much better character, and that's where I think it really took a risk on it, and I thought Naomi Scott did really well in that character. Overall, with the Disney live-action movies, it's been kind of just really average, and they've been really hard to match up, and it's just because they're really trying to tap into this whole idea of nostalgia making money. They can get me to go watch it because of my nostalgia and many other people, but then Disney could make a crap movie and we'll still go see it because they're fine with that as long as we keep giving them money. But here's the thing, those movies aren't good, and I wouldn't recommend to any kids that I would have in the future to watch those movies. I would show them the animated movies because they have so much more power to them and so much more emotion to them, and frankly, they're just better movies. I know you're not really supposed to compare these movies, but when you legitimately just change so much of it or change certain aspects of it and some of those things don't matter so much, it's kind of hard to not compare them. And frankly, I mean, yeah, you can do that too with this movie, but I think there was some really good things about this movie that did separate and allowed it to take some risks overall that make this movie a very good time to enjoy, more so than the other live action movies. And frankly, for me, this was one of the most enjoyable times I had watching it. Now, the live action movie stars Louis Yufei in the title role alongside Donnie Yen, Jason Scott Lee, Yosan An, Zhe Ma, Gong Li, and Jet Li in supporting roles. It was directed by Nikki Caro with the screenplay by Rick Jaffa, Amanda Silver, Lauren Hanick, and Elizabeth Martin. While the movie was said to not include Mushu Li Shang or the songs, I thought it could be really good. As I already stated, I was a big fan of the animated version, so I had a lot of high hopes. In short, I can't say I was disappointed. Well, I won't go into my flaws too much right now. The main thing that I will say I was disappointed in was that it's a shame that this won't be on the big screen for most people. I am lucky enough to be able to watch it on a 92-inch screen, and frankly, I thought it was beautiful. It had really amazing set pieces, the action was dazzling, and the colors were really great. The plot adheres to many of the elemental plot points of the animated film, and it has realistic action and violent sequences that really do make it a PG-13 movie. The beginning of the film shows a young Mulan, played by Crystal Rao, who is also really good, breaking the rules and getting into trouble. She has a chi, which is a life force energy flow that she's untrained on how to use at such a young age. Her mother, played by Rosalind Shao, is worried that the town matchmaker won't be able to find a man for her rebellious daughter. Father Hua Zhao, played by the excellent Zhe Ma, who is a legendary war hero. He loves his daughters, and he loves that there is this quote-unquote boundless energy of life speaking through her every motion. But when Mulan is a little bit older, now played by Louis Yufei, he tells her,
Chi is for warriors, not daughters.
So this kind of keeps up the misogynistic feeling of the animated version. There's obviously a lot of love there, but he is traditionally misogynistic. China is then invaded by the Mulan warrior Bori Khan, played by Jason Scott Lee, and as he invades, the emperor, played by Jet Li, puts out an order for one man from every family to join the Chinese army. Same story that we know from the animated movie. As Mulan family only has her mother, her sister, and her aging/disabled father, there is only one man that can go to war, who obviously will most likely be killed. As in the animated movie, Mulan takes her father's armor, her family's legacy sword, and disguises herself as a man and enlists in the army. Film then progresses through some training sequences with Mulan trying to hide her identity. In an obvious reference to the animated movie, there's a joke about her smelling awful because of course she cannot bathe with her fellow trainees. And frankly, I thought this was better than what they could have done in the animated movie.
I am Yao, king of the rock.
Ouch! Something bit me. What a nasty flavor.
Snake!
Boy, that was close.
No, that was foul. You owe me big.
Never want to see a naked man again.
Hey, don't look at me. I ain't biting no more butts.
But it's also a really funny scene. This leads to a great face-off between Mulan and the man interest of this movie, Chen Honghui, played by Yosin An, who is the top fighter in the country. And this was another one of the changes that they made, were taking away the Li Shang character and putting in Honghui and also the new Commander Dong, played by Donnie Yen, who I really love seeing in this movie. I know some of the reasons that they gave for this was the Me Too movement and everything, but I think that from a character's perspective, it works better this way. But having said that, I understand why people were upset about it, but I mean, I think it works better. I honestly like the separation of these two characters because it allowed for someone to see Mulan as an equal from a soldier perspective, but then also from the higher up perspective as well, and it really added more to her character from that angle. I think the director, Caro, really knows how to stage elaborate action sequences, and she balances the drama and comedy, I think, fairly well. They are well choreographed sequences, such as the one where Mulan is on a horse and then dodges arrows by leaning back on her saddle, then flipping and kicking. This is honestly striking. Pun not intended, and has nearly been 2 decades since Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon brought China's wuxia cinema into the American mainstream. I'm pretty sure that this is the first time that it is driven in such a high-profile American studio. Voting isn't just going to the polls anymore on election day. Options like early voting, mail-in voting, and ballot drop boxes are available to more voters and are growing in popularity. How to Vote is a tool created by Democracy Works, and it breaks down the options your state offers by forecasting a ballot, empowering you to decide where and when to vote. Democracy works best when we all vote, but misinformation and confusion about election procedures have resulted in low voter turnout. How to Vote takes the guesswork out of the voting process. It is easy to use and helps folks from all over the country overcome many of the process barriers to voting. It is committed to helping you vote no matter what. You can use the How to Vote tool to sign up for election reminders, see what's on your ballot, get step-by-step assistance requesting your mail ballot, explore your options for returning your mail-in ballot, check your voter registration status, and find your local polling site, and make sure that you have an appropriate ID to bring with you. Decide when and where you'll vote this year at howto.vote. The score accompanying the action is also pretty fantastic, along with some really, really great cinematography. A bright green bamboo forest to snow-covered mountains to horizon-spanning canyons. And while not historically accurate, the design of this film is pretty fantastic as well, especially with the Emperor's Palace and really the costumes. I think the outfits are amazing in the movie, and it's a real pleasure to see that on screen that I don't think a lot of people are going to see. Again, having said that, it is historically inaccurate, which is partially a flaw for me, but that was an issue with the trailer originally, so thinking about this movie from that angle, it should have been expected. But it is a bigger issue overall with the movie, which again, I'll get into in a little bit. I also really enjoyed the makeup in this movie because Jet Li is almost unrecognizable as the Emperor, and I really enjoyed that. It also has some fantastic magical elements, from Jinlong's sorcery to the soaring phoenix that occasionally appears to the title characters to Mulan's wire fu fighting style. The biggest difference from the animated movie is the idea of chi, and this is So Mulan isn't just this simple tomboy from a rural village, she has this kind of superpower, which is an essentially strong qi. So qi is a vital life force energy in Chinese philosophy that basically permeates everything. Those with this can learn to channel it, make it for fierce, skilled warriors, but as Mulan's father says,
Qi is for warriors, not daughters. And it is time for you to hide your gift away.
So essentially, girls who exhibit these gifts are shunned as witches.
What do you do with witches? And what do you burn apart from witches? Wood. So, why do witches burn? Because they're made of wood. Good. So, how do we tell whether she is made of wood? Does a wood sink in water? No. What also floats in water? A duck. So, logically, if she weighs the same as a duck, she's made of wood. And therefore, away!
This movie also introduces a shape-shifting woman named Jianlang, played by Gong Li, who was also in Memoirs of the Geisha and Curse of the Golden Flower, and also Michael Mann's Miami Vice, who was once just like Mulan and a young girl with a very strong tree who was exiled for not conforming to traditional womanly ideals.
Quiet, composed, graceful, elegant, poised, polite.
Her character is an advancement of a character that they had in the prior film, a hawk that just was an assistant to the main villain of the story. In the animated movie, his name was Shan Yu. In this movie, his name is Bori Khan. So in this movie, villain has been through a lot of wars, and he has a lot of respect from a lot of the Mulan leaders. And as similar to Game of Thrones' Jon Snow, he unified the other groups to increase his army, increase power, and now he can attack the Emperor. Now, one thing that I do think that this movie touches on is a somewhat complex character of a villain. His character does show how colonialism has pushed out native or indigenous cultures, and that his fight is to regain and recompose this culture of the Rouran Khanate, and also that reestablish their power structure. He is made to be the villain, but he really isn't one, because he's essentially the oppressed pushing back against the oppressors. And honestly, it adds a lot that the original Shan Yu didn't have, who's really only looked at as an invader. Now, I don't think it's as complex as the Killmonger character in Black Panther, but I think there was some elements there that kind of align him similarly, though again, it's also still the villain aspect to him. Going back to Gong Li's character, she embodies this vengeful bitterness of a woman who is misunderstood and is exiled for it. She says,
I was a girl like you when people turned on me. You don't think I longed for a noble path. I've lived a life of exile. The more power I showed, the more I was crushed. Just like you. You saved them today. And still they turned on you.
I like how this movie shows that a woman in power is problematic, and because they have this power, they are pushed back with fear and screams of witchcraft. And she's essentially Mulan's dark reflection, and is similar to obviously any antagonist role when you compare it to the hero of the story, Luke versus Darth Vader, Harry Potter versus Voldemort. And there are lines in this that do align themselves with this.
Merge your path with mine. We will be stronger together. Join me. We will take our place together.
But honestly, I think that there is some compelling aspects to this character, because she's urging Mulan to join her because she's saying that she will never be accepted into Chinese culture, and that's based on her experience. She feels that she's honestly looking out for her. Yeah, it's a really crappy end result, but it's honestly based on her experience, and she wants to help her. Yeah, there's obviously that power aspect to it, but I feel that that's still compelling. And honestly, her character development I think is also really strong because of where she comes from, but then is able to see the goodness in Mulan's heart and then decides to change her attitude because she knows it's the right thing to do. The two actors here have really good performances playing off one another, and their interactions are some of the best parts of the movie. This does, however, make the army men seem less important in the story. However, I think that the writing was trying to do was making this movie about Mulan being the best version of herself instead of quote-unquote becoming a man. And I think it's a really great story angle to tackle here. Yeah, we want the romance with Chen Hongli to do well, but that even doesn't become the ending of this movie, because similar to what happens in the ballad, she just denies the post, and then they do have a progressive moment where she becomes a very strong general in the end, but that romance isn't the end result. At the end of the animated movie, when she returns from war, her goal apparently was to get a man, and frankly, that kind of undermines the feminist attitude that the entire movie had.
Great. She brings home a sword. If you ask me, she should have brought home a man.
Excuse me.
Woo! Sign me up for the next war.
Would you like to stay for dinner?
Would you like to stay forever?
But here, the romance doesn't matter so much. You actually don't even know if they're going to become a couple. Yeah, we want them to, but it's not guaranteed. Most likely they will, but it's still not really honestly developed as much as a typical romance because it's not the focus of this movie. It's really focusing on her being equal to her male counterparts as it shows in the ending, which really is just the point of this entire movie. And again, if she finds love, great. If not, who cares? It's about her, and it's about her finding out who she is. And I feel that this movie's more about being true to yourself, having people accept you for who you really are. Mulan's father tells her when she returns and asking for forgiveness for running away with his stuff.
You were always there, yet I see you for the first time.
While some of those online are not fans of the fantastical aspects of the movie, remember Ancestors and a Talking Dragon were in the animated movie. And yeah, that's an animated movie, but I think it's people not knowing what they want. They want a live action version that is true to the animated version while also stepping outside of it. And I think this film is that attempt at it. It tries to give the fans of the animated version something similar while also keeping to the realistic view that they were going for. While obviously meaningful in the animated version's portrayal of the ancestors impacting the life of the present, I think it would be pretty weird to have ghosts of ancestors flying around like in the animated movie, or having talking dragons in real life. I mean, again, look at The Lion King. The animals in that were really awful. I think having a person's chi guiding you makes more sense. Chi translates to air, figuratively as maternal energy, life force, energy flow. Chi is the central underlying principle to Chinese traditional medicine and Chinese martial arts. I see people online really comparing this thing to Star Wars and the Force, but again, Star Wars came out in the late 70s. Chi has been going on for thousands of years, so check yourself on that. Feng Wang, or Phoenix, was the symbol of royals in Mulan's time. Long, as your dragon, didn't occur until much later. And China really has a history again of 5,000 years, so it really does make sense to use this, even though it was a little cheesy at times. Furthermore, the Feng Wang is often considered to signify both male and female elements in a yin-yang type of harmony. It's the name, a combination of words, Feng representing the male aspect and Wang representing the female. If seen in the world, it is a sign of world peace. This obviously aligns perfectly with the message of the story of Mulan. Furthermore, the idea of mastering your chi makes sense with finding yourself. The practice of cultivating and balancing chi is called qigong, and it is done in a way of finding balance of who you are. Again, it's about balance. It's about understanding that there are pluses and minuses of who you are. That's what makes humans interesting, aka yin yang, aka Feng Wang, aka the Phoenix, aka Mulan. I also really enjoyed seeing again Jet Li and Donnie Yen in this movie. I'm pretty sure this is the second film that they have done together, and it's really fun for me to see two big martial arts legends on screen in the same movie, even though they didn't fight one another like they did in Hero. I really love seeing Wen Mingwas again in the movie. To me, it was a great passing of the torch moment. I also love the amount of East Asian representation on screen with some really great performances by actors that either American viewers don't know or they forget about. However, that is where the representation stops. But before I get into that, I do want to say I have a few issues with some of the reviews that I have been reading online. The first one is with the Hong Kong issues with the starring actor. I think applying her personal views to the movie's story is kind of misguided. This is not to say that I agree with what she says. I actually actually do disagree with it extremely. I just don't understand how a film that is based on an animated movie, which is also based on a ballad, is somehow a representation of her supporting her government. Like I said, I don't agree with what she says, but what did you expect from a film that's based on a story that has a woman fighting for the emperor? Would you say these issues if the actor wasn't with the Hong Kong police? Probably not. Now, again, I don't agree with the starring actor's sentiment about being pro-Hong Kong police. I just think that applying that to issues with this film really can lead to misviewing of what's going on in this specific movie. And I kind of touched on this earlier. My other issues with the comparing the plot to Star Wars. To me, yes, there are similarities, but Star Wars doesn't hold the rights to good versus evil. And yes, like I said, there's that comparison to The Force, but again, check yourself on the years. But honestly, how this film has that concept, but then adds the pushback against a misogynistic society really makes that idea more complex. My issue with the Star Wars sentiment is not the originality of the story, but rather Star Wars is the comparing film. I love Star Wars, but it is not the end-all of stories. Frankly, it's not even an original story, and honestly, we shouldn't be comparing that story and using that as the model stories. Now, I'm not going to say that this film was original in that way, but I'm not going to also say that it borrowed from Star Wars. It's not original. This idea of good versus bad and an idea of having this inner power is honestly just a thing that can happen. Again, there are so many stories that deal with something like this, and Star Wars isn't the only one, and this isn't the only one that has done something similar. So to attack this film for that reason, to me, again, seems misguided. Having said that, I do think the writing could have been a little bit better, but I think that it's trying to grab old fans with that. Mulan could have been written a little bit more robustly, however, I don't think it was that awful. I think the feminist aspects weren't always the best. I didn't really understand why the Emperor had to tell Mulan to stand up in the final scene.
You are a mighty warrior. Rise up like a phoenix.
It almost, again, felt contradictory to the feminist message that this movie was trying to do. But then they made up for it afterwards. However, I would say that my biggest issue with the movie is that it was directed by a white woman. Now, it's great that there's a woman directing, no issue there. However, I feel an Asian director would have been better, as it's trying to be like that anyway. She does try to convince the audience that they're watching a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon or hero movie, except those films were directed by Asian directors. The action sequences are clearly influenced by the wuxia genre, but it isn't as good. It's more like 70% there. This honestly felt at times a good attempt by a white American person trying to do something good and trying to be diverse, but still not understanding that the issue of diversity, it's not supposed to be given by those in power. Rather, it's allowing it to happen by giving those without power power. To tell a quote-unquote authentic story of a legendary Chinese warrior, Disney hired a white director, a white costume designer, 4 white screenwriters, a white composer, a white cinematographer, a white film editor, and a white casting director. It's a good attempt, but honestly a better one would have been to give an Asian person the reins on at least one of those professions to help out. Because frankly, there are things that could have been double checked. Like for example, the accuracy of the costumes. Much as I enjoyed the look of them, and again, it's the feel of it, it does feel that they are Chinese. However, it's putting something in there that's from a completely different dynasty, so it doesn't make sense that it's in there. But then you see when they tried to do more of using the phoenix aspect instead of the dragon aspect, so it's like they're trying, but they didn't do all of their homework. So again, next time maybe try to do your homework a little bit more, or maybe give somebody with a little bit more knowledge the opportunity to show the knowledge or show what they can do. Again, having a woman director is great, but there are plenty of Asian directors of all genders out there that could have directed this and potentially done it a little bit better. I guess progress is progress, but maybe on the next one it could be done better. Overall, though, I think it was a great experience, and frankly, it was the best thing that I think has come out of a Disney remake of an animated movie. I enjoyed the look of it, which unfortunately I don't think everyone will, because they don't have a big enough screen to do so. The action was great, the colors, the costumes were great, even though historically inaccurate and not exactly the genre is trying to be. Even though it was done by a white guy, the score was pretty amazing by Henry Gregson Williams, who is the composer of Wonder Woman. And though controversial, the film had some really good acting by the many stars. And honestly, this is my favorite when it has come to the Disney remakes because it dared to be different but also feeling the same. The representation that it had on screen is important, but so is the representation behind this camera as well. What did you think of the movie? And what's your favorite Disney remake? Let me know. Hit me up on social media. The Former Reviews on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where I post many different things, including trailer react, and the URL is all the same. It's at The Former Review for each one. Feel free to check out backseatdirectors.com, where I work with a big team of writers working on reviews and also editorials and much, much more. Again, that's backseatdirectors.com. Please also subscribe to the podcast on your favorite service. It is on Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and really, honestly, anywhere you can find podcasts. Also, I'm always wanting to grow and improve, so feel free to leave a review on your favorite service. I see the numbers and I do this for you all, and I want to keep it entertaining. I really appreciate everyone supporting me by listening and talking about movies with me online. For those who have contributed financially, I really thank you for supporting me in that way. For those who want to financially contribute, please go to anchor.fm/the-formal-review and click support this podcast. And I thank you very much in advance, and any donation is appreciated. Thank you all for tuning in once again, and until next time, stay safe, wash your hands, wear your mask, and I'll see you at the movies. Take care, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of The Former Review. Cheers, and we hope you'll join us again.